keep pace with, but here in 2 Kings, we're starting to get to some confusion. So today, we're going to be looking at the king of Israel. His name is Joram. He's the son of Ahab. But then at the end of chapter 8, we're going to be introduced to a guy named, sorry, I'm spacing on his name real quick, Jehoram, I believe. Let me just make sure. Yeah, Jehoram. Both guys, Joram, the king of Israel, and Jehoram, the king of Judah, they actually have the same name. Both can be referred to as Jehoram. So do your best, stay in the Bible, allow the Bible to answer questions for you. So we start here in chapter 6, and we see this really cool little scene. There is a school of prophets, and Elisha is the teacher. Now the school is growing so much that they need to expand. Now we just pause on that. There's a miracle that's mentioned, but how cool is it that Elisha is the teacher over the next generation of prophets, that he's investing in the next generation. And as he invests in them, we see that their interest in the ministry peaks. I'm so blessed to see guys who have gone before me, who have laid the foundation for younger guys in ministry to be able to come into ministry and to succeed. I think of guys like Pat Lazovich, Robert Furrow, Ed Taylor, Jim Gallagher, like all these guys, like they're just doing such a good work with the younger generation, loving them, giving them opportunity. I mean, I served with Pastor Robert, and he had me teach the congregation when I was 19 years old. 19, he had me teach it was close to 800 people or so at a service, and I taught that many people at 19. I had no idea what I was talking about. So thankful that for opportunities like that, for men who are willing to trust the Lord and to teach you at a young age. I want to encourage you, as we all are getting older, let's keep our eyes back. Let's be looking at the next generation. Let's be willing to invest in them, just like Elisha's doing. Now, since it's growing, they have to build this new school, and while they're building the school, this guy, he whacks a tree, and the axe head comes flying off, and he freaks out. And he looks at Elisha, and he goes, I don't know what to do. This axe is borrowed. So he's using somebody else's axe, and he breaks it. No doubt, we all have experience with something like that, right? But unfortunately for us, we didn't have Elisha around. Elisha goes, don't worry, and he throws a stick in the water, and where the stick hits, the axe head floats. The iron axe head begins to float up on the water, and he says, go get it. And the guy goes and gets it. So that's just kind of like the little sub-story before we get into the two main stories. The first story is the king of Syria now wants to make war with the king of Israel. Now, again, the king of Israel is the son of the wicked King Ahab. King Ahab and Jezebel, their son Jehoram, or Joram for our purposes. And Elisha, from the Lord, gets word that the king of Syria wants to go and attack Israel. And so Elisha sends to Joram and he says, hey, just so you know, the king of Syria wants to come and attack you. Now, word gets back to the king of Syria that Israel is ready for the attack. And he goes, who in our rank is a traitor? Like, who did this? And they go, no, it's none of us. It's actually the prophet of God. He's the one who did it. And so he says, well, where is he? They find out where he is. They surround the camp. Now, Elisha at this time, he has a servant. It's not Gehazi, which that's going to come up later. But he has a servant, and is a young servant, and he freaks out. And he wakes him up. He goes, Elisha, we're surrounded by a troop from Syria. What are we going to do? And Elisha says, those who are for us is so much more than those who are against us. He goes, Lord, would you open his eyes? And he looks up and he sees a chariot of fire. It's just such a cool picture. Chariots of fire that are surrounding the Syrian army. Elisha could see into the spiritual world, whereas this young guy didn't. And so therefore he lacked faith, where Elisha, he's not even batting an eye. He's not concerned at all. And so then he just prays and says, Lord, would you strike the Assyrians with blindness? He then leads them to Samaria, which would be right where they don't want to be. And their eyes are open. He then, Elisha talks to Joram, and Joram, like a little kid, goes, can I kill him? Can I kill him? And Elisha goes, no, don't kill him, right? Treat them like prisoners of war, essentially. And it ends. And the raiders from Syria go, we're never going to do this again. We're not going to attack the children of Israel. And it ends great. But then in the same chapter, you get to verse 24, and it says, and then after that time, Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, gathered all his army and went and besieged Samaria. So the king of Samaria hears what happens, and although the raiders say, we're not going to go and raid Samaria again, the king of Syria, Ben-Hadad, he goes and besieges the town. Now, when you besiege a town, you're blocking off all supplies to get into the town. And so you're essentially forcing a famine. You're forcing the economy to shut down. Nothing comes in, nothing goes out. And eventually, you're just going to wait them out. They're either going to begin to starve and they're going to surrender and come out, or whatever, get so thirsty that they need to come out. That's the plan. And so in the city, they're reacting as if it's just this horrific famine. And there we see, it says in verse 31, then he said, God, do so to me and more also if the head of Elisha, the son of Shaphat, remains on him today. That's Joram. We see Joram went from calling Elisha his father, submitting to him, welcoming him in his court, to now things are bad. And so what does he do? He blames Elisha. Joram to me is just a super weak leader. Someone who will follow somebody else when they're succeeding, will then step in front and take the praise. But then when things go bad, he's going to point and shift blame on somebody else. That's exactly what he does. He points, he says it's Elisha's fault. Elisha could have stopped all this from happening. Elisha is the one who brought the troops here to Samaria, and he's the reason why we're going through all that we're going through. So it says there at the end of verse 33, surely this calamity is from the Lord. Why should I wait for the Lord any longer? That's Joram. Because I'm not going to wait for God anymore. This is ridiculous. God's plan isn't my plan, and so I'm going to press ahead with my plan. I know that we are not the kings of Israel, but have you ever gotten in that same position where you're just frustrated? You thought, man, my plan was that all these things were going to be accomplished at this time. I thought that I was going to be in this certain position, and I'm not there. And you go, forget God's plan. Forget God's timing. I don't need it. I don't want it. I'm going to go with my time. And that's exactly where Joram is. Now, it's kind of a cool story because Elisha then prophesies, tomorrow the famine's going to be gone, there's going to be plunder in the land, right? And there's these four lepers who are on the outskirts of the city, and they're like, what are we doing? We're going to die here on the outskirts of the city of Samaria. We might as well go and offer ourselves up to the Syrians because at least maybe they'll take care of us. And worst case scenario, we die. Like either way, like we're going to die. So we might as well just go and see, maybe they'll take care of us. And so as they go, they find that the Syrians are all gone. And the author of 2 Kings tells us why. That God had essentially scared them, made them hear something that wasn't there, and they all, in a panic. I mean, they left their horses and their donkeys, and you go, guys, horses run faster than you. Like, in panic, you're not thinking. But they just all bail. And so all of this, it's almost like a minor city outside of Samaria because they had all these troops that were outside Samaria besieging the city. All of it's left. So their clothes are left, their food is left, their animals are left, everything is left. Now these lepers go and enjoy it for a little bit, and they go, you know what, we should go and we should report back to the king and let him know. He does. The king, Joram, again, a week later goes, no, this is Samaria. They're trying to trick us. I'm sorry, this is the Syrians. They're trying to trick us. And then one of his counselors goes, why don't you just send out the 5 horses that we have left in the city, right? All the other horses are dead. Send them out with riders, and let's just see. And he goes, okay, fine. Well, what's the worst that can happen? So he sends them out. They go and they see. It gets reported back to the town that all the Syrians are gone, and then the Israelites go out from Samaria and they just plunder all that was in the camp by those who are besieging their very own city. Then from there, we go to the next story. So we see that there's victory there. The next story is the woman who we've been introduced to before, the Shunammite, who, remember, she prepared the place for Elisha. Well, Elisha had told her there's going to be a famine for 7 years. You need to get out of here. So she goes and she hangs out with the Philistines. She comes back now and she says, hey, I want to get my land. I want to get my house. I want to get my property. And so she's presenting herself to the king. On her way, this is a really interesting story. Gehazi, Remember, he was the unfaithful servant of Elisha. Remember that with Nahum, that he ended up getting the leprosy of Naaman. There's his name. His name's Naaman. He ended up getting the leprosy of Naaman. Gehazi's here. He's in the king's court, and he's talking to the king. We're assuming it's King Joram, of all of the wonders of Elisha. And we go, what is going on? Like, I thought Gehazi was a leper. I thought he was gone. Like, I thought he was probably going to die. What's happening? Well, either this is just an older story, and it just fits because this is where the author thought it'd be a good place to put it, or this is Gehazi and he's been healed. Or the third possibility is that he still has leprosy, which is what I think, and that Joram is there, and Joram is willing to risk being in the presence of a leper. He's not close. I mean, man, he had social distancing down, right? Like that's what the lepers had to do. They had to very much enforce social distancing, right? Like they were kicked out of town even. And so he's just sitting there letting him talk. And you'd imagine Gehazi is so humbled by all the results of his sin that he's just sitting there and he's talking about all that Elisha had done. He said, even at one point, Elisha resurrected a boy after he had died. And as he's saying that, in comes the Shunammite woman, the mother of the boy who Elisha had resurrected. Don't you love when God does stuff like that? Like, it's just God's timing. You could never have planned it, and it just works out. That's exactly what it is. I just think these are little winks from heaven. Like, God is interested, he's paying attention, and that's exactly what takes place there. And then King Joram, he gives the Shunammite woman all of her land. Well, then we kind of shift scenes back over to Syria, and Ben-Hadad, who's the king of Syria, the enemy of Israel, he calls for Elisha. You go, he was calling for Elisha's head before, and now he wants Elisha's presence. It's interesting. He has grown to respect Elisha. And what I've observed in my time, that as a man of God, as a woman of God, continues to walk faithfully with the Lord, even enemies recognize their consistency. Even enemies recognize their faithfulness. And so Ben-Hadad, he goes, I got to hear from this guy. And so he asks him, am I going to die? Right? And Elisha says, it's a very interesting story because Hazael is the one who comes on behalf of Ben-Hadad to talk to Elisha. And Elisha says, go tell him that he's not going to die, right? But Elisha knew that he was going to die. A lot of people have issues with this. They go, is he lying? Well, one possibility is that what he's saying is he's not going to die from this disease, but Elisha knew that he was going to die right then after. And Elisha begins to cry. And Hazael says, man of God, why are you crying? And Elisha says, because I know that you're going to become the next king, and I'm seeing all the horrific things that you're going to do to the children of Israel. It's an interesting prophecy. And Hazael ends up leaving, and then he himself assassinates Ben-Hadad. So he must have been restored to health, and then he was assassinated by Hazael. And then from there, it starts going into other kings. It goes into Jehoram, who's the king of Judah, same name as the king of Israel, different guy. And then from there, Ahaziah, who then reigns after Jehoram in Judah. Like I said, it can get kind of confusing. I encourage you, get like a timeline if you can. You can just Google it, like 2 Kings timeline, and it will line up all these different kings for you. It'll help you just keep track. But anyways, lots of lessons in all of these guys. Obviously, the main lesson, the life of Elisha, consistency, faithfulness is much better than the wishy-washiness of the other characters that we see in the story. God bless you guys. I hope that you're blessed, and we'll see you again tomorrow at noon.